Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So, do's and don'ts for realistic eyes. We'll start with the don't first. So you'll see that I've got two eyes laid out exactly the same. So for don'ts, the worst thing you can possibly do is outline anything that you're drawing. What I'm doing here is going in with a really dark pencil straight away, outlining where all my lines are, but really dark, and I'm using the same pencil to do everything. There's no blending, there's no layers. It's all just done with one pencil. Thick, dark outlines. It doesn't work. You really need to work up in layers, which we'll discuss as we go on to the do part. So, and with the eyelashes as well, they're all coming out of the same place. They're all the same length. It just doesn't work, obviously, as you can see. Again, thick outlines, all with the same pencil. No good. Again, the eyelashes at the bottom, all the same length, all the same thickness, all starting in the same place. Just doesn't look realistic at all. Like I said, it's all done with the same pencil. There's no blending, and yeah, that's how not to draw. Okay, so let's move on to the do. So I like to start. It depends actually. With this eye, I started with the outer iris. Sometimes I start with the pupil, sometimes I start with the iris. Doesn't really matter. But what does matter is that I'm using a much harder pencil. This is a HB, um, and I'm not going in making really dark outlines. I like to use the side of my pencil when I'm shading, which is why I sharpen my pencils the way I do. Um, it's much easier to get a flatter shading without too many harsh pencil strokes if you use the side of your pencil. So this is just a base layer. There's no gradation. I'm not trying to work in any um, realism into this. This is just getting a base layer down, getting the iris um, all covered basically. And then I like to go in with a blending stump, tissue or a cotton wool bud, and just to blend it out. But go gently with that. You don't want to be pushing down really hard on the paper. It's just a gentle blending. And I tend to use my blending stump as well if, as you can see, that's got quite a bit of graphite on the end of that. So you can use your blending stump to darken areas that need to be darker without adding any more pencil. You can just go over it with your blending stump and just transfer some of that graphite that's on the blending stump over onto your drawing. And here I'm just um, softening the edges of the iris and into the whites of the eye. It's never just a dark straight line. There's always some sort of gradation out into the whites of the eye. And now going in for the pupil, I like to avoid the highlighted area. These this pencil I'm using is a 6B. It's a Mars Lumograph Black, and they do get really dark. So once they're on, you can't get them back off very well. So make sure when you're going in with your dark pencils that you are definitely in the right place. And yeah, avoid the highlighted area. so that can stay as bright as it needs to. This is now my 8B, and again, just going back in, just darkening, just getting those layers in. For realism, you really have to work in layers. You can't just be one pencil and it's done. You've got to go over it and over and over it to get the layers in, to get the different depths. Your really darks and your mid-tones and your highlights. It's all from layers. So I'm just going back in again, just darkening where it needs to be darker. And again, just blending that out and now blending it into the iris a little bit as well. Again, it's never a straight, just a line from the pupil into the iris. There's always some sort of softening, some sort of gradation. Darken the outer part of the iris now. There is always a dark line around the outside of the iris. As I say, it softens into the iris, but it also softens into the whites of the eye, which, whilst we're talking about the whites of the eye, are not white. Very, very, very rarely is there a part of the white of the eye that's actually white. It's always got some sort of shade in the corners, by the tear duct, and on the other side, because it's an oval shape, so it recesses back behind the eyelids, both top and bottom. So as it's going behind something, there will always be some sort of gradation coming back out. So just going back in, this is my 2B, just darkening the bottom eyelid. You really need to be working off a reference image if you're trying to capture realism, and you need to make sure that you're constantly looking from your drawing to your reference image, making sure that you've got the angles right, you've got the shapes right. I tend to look, especially for eyes, I tend to look at the whites of the eyes and try and make sure that that's the correct shape. If the whites of the eyes are the correct shape, then the iris will be the correct shape, and then you've just got to make sure that the pupil's correct inside the iris. So make sure you're looking at your shapes first and foremost to make sure that everything is where it should be. And then I'm just going through my 2B pencil, just anywhere that needs to be darker. Get those bits darker before we go back in and blend it all out again. So you can see I use my blending stump to soften into the whites of the eyes. Like I was saying, they're not white, and that's where the eye goes behind the eyelids and recedes back. Because it's receding back and it's going behind something, there will always be an edge to value and a gradation working away from that edge to value. So I'm just using my blending stump just to get a few of the spokes in, although they didn't come off very dark. There's not much of a difference between the spokes and the actual iris. Onto the eyelashes, you need to pay real close attention to the eyelashes. They are one of the hardest parts to get right. So you need to look at where they're growing from, where they're growing to, so the length of them, what direction they're curling in, and again, layers. You've got to get the layers in. You can't just go around with a pencil like I've just done, get some eyelashes in and expect it to look real. It doesn't work like that. You've got to get layers in. So I'm just darkening the bottoms of where they're growing from, and then I pull out of the dark area. You really need a sharp pencil for this as well. I should have sharpened my pencil for this. The sharper you can keep your pencil, when you're doing eyelashes, the better. So that's putting the top of the eyelid in, and that's how sharp you need your pencil. If it'll focus. There we go. You really do need a sharp pencil for getting the single eyelashes in. You really need to take your time with eyelashes. And as you pull away at the end of the stroke, you need to pull away with a gradation. Don't just stop and then lift your pencil off the paper. Lift your pencil off the paper as you're pulling away. That'll help you get that fine point on the end of the eyelash. And like at the moment, it looks like it's not going to get there. It's like it doesn't look real. It doesn't look realistic. How am I? You've just got to keep going with it. You just need to keep persevering, keep working, keep looking at your reference image, and just keep working it, making sure that you keep everything in the right range of value, and it will come together. I promise you. You've just got to work at it. So I haven't put any pencil on my eyelids apart from the eyelashes, and I'm going over with blending stump that's already got graphite on it. It's already dirty, and as you can see, you can get so much value off it. So then it's a much easier way of getting a base layer down if you can go that dark. If your values don't let you go that dark, then you need to do it with your pencil and then use a piece of tissue or a clean blending stump to blend it. As I keep saying, it's just about looking back at your reference picture, seeing where the darks are, transferring that to your page, blending it, your pencil's back, going over it again, blending it, and you just keep going with it until you're happy with it, until you think it's somewhere where it needs to be. Also the eraser as well. I use my eraser a lot, whether it's my stick eraser, which is my Tombow Mono Zero, or the kneaded eraser. It's just as important as my pencils. That's the Tombow Mono Zero, so see you can get really fine details. Take out any highlights. I'm just going back in now with my 8B, darkening the sides of the iris. Another layer, as I keep saying, look at your reference image, look at your drawing, and just transfer the values from one to another. Go back in with your blending stump and blend it all out. Blend it into the iris. Blend it into the whites of the eyes. And as you can see, you keep going and going and going, and it does start to come together. It's just looking at your reference image. The more you do it, the better you'll get at seeing the different values, the slight subtle changes in values. And it's the slight subtle changes in values that if you capture those, it's what really makes your drawing just jump off the page. Don't be scared to go too dark. Lots of people are scared to go too dark. They like working with a HB pencil and that's it. If you want realism, you need a range of pencils and you need to not be scared to go too dark. But I do emphasize that you need a good sketch. You need an accurate sketch. And you need to make sure that everything is in the right place where it should be before you go dark. You really will not get it off. I'm just going around with my 8B again, just darkening the crease. As you can see, I'm taking a lot longer on this eye than I did on the don't eye, but I'm still not taking a massive amount of time on this. You can spend like 40 minutes an hour on just one eye, getting the proportion down, getting the basics down, and then rendering it to a realistic eye. It's not a 5 minute job. It does take time, especially for realism. You've got to accept that it will take a while. You just need to keep going in, stay patient, keep looking at your reference image, and just keep going backwards and forwards, and you will get there. It's very rewarding when you do get there. Again, I'm just going back in with my Tombow Mono Zero eraser and taking it anywhere that's gotten too dark. I need lighter, any little details. And make sure that you use some sort of brush to get rid of the rubber bits. Don't wipe it away with your hand, because you'll be wiping whatever's on your hand. Your hand carries all kinds of greases and oils and just natural grease and oil. You'll be wiping all of that all over your drawing, and then the graphite clings differently to where the grease and oil is, and it can ruin your picture. You can end up with fingerprints, all sorts. So make sure you've just got some sort of brush, just to brush away any debris from your picture. And you'll find that you get a lot. It's something that you do quite often, is just brush over it. Only gently, you don't want to brush too hard, or else you'll brush around all the graphite and move it all around, which is not what we want to do. So now I'm just going back in, just darkening the bottom lid, just blending over that with a piece of tissue. So I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper, and the tissue on the smooth paper blends really, really, really nice. You can get some really nice skin tones just from using tissue paper to blend. I'm just going back in now, just lightening back up the waterline. You need to pay close attention when you're drawing your waterline and where the eyelashes are coming from. Because the eyelashes don't grow from the waterline, they grow from underneath the waterline. So you need that clear waterline first underneath the eye, and then the eyelashes growing out below it. But as I said, the eraser is just as much is just as useful as a pencil, really, when you're in drawing. Like you say, you're going to draw. What do you need? You need a pencil. Well, you need an eraser just as much as you need a pencil. Especially the Tombow Mono Zero, that is a brilliant eraser. You can get some really fine details with that. So I'm just going over again and just darkening the bits that need to be darker, and then blending it all out again. You'll notice I blend it to the top as well as the bottom, because that's a crease. So it will be softening out on both sides as it comes back out of the crease. The gradation will be below and above. A little bit too dark. So just going in with my eraser and just lighten that back up. As long as you don't press too hard, you can, especially if you've shaded like I am now with the side of the pencil, you can pick up most of the graphite unless you're using a really dark pencil. But this is a 2B, so this one comes off okay. Until you get up to like a 6B, usually, is like I say, if you're shading with the side of your pencil like that, you can take off pretty much anything. But in the pupil, where that highlight is, you can't shade with the side of your pencil like that. It needs to be as dark as it can be, which means you need to use the point of your pencil, and it's also an 8B, which is the darkest I've got. So I wouldn't be able to fetch that highlight back out. So just getting the darks back in and just gone back over with some tissue paper just to smooth out again. And now I'm going back in with blending stump just to get those shadows in there. I want to get it softening into the whites of the eyes. The shadows working towards the centre. As I said, the eye is spherical, so it's always going to be darkest right in the corners where it's going in and behind the eyelids. Okay, looks like we're getting somewhere. So I just sharpened my eraser to a point so that I can get these really, really fine creases. Going back in with 2B, darkening the bottom of those eyelashes. These are covered in mascara, so they're clumping together and they're really dark at the bottom. That is a pencil eraser, which is also very handy. You can sharpen that just like you can the Tombow Mono Zero, and I think you can actually probably get finer details with the pencil eraser. And now I'm going back in and getting the pupil as dark as I can. Once you've got value around the rest of the eye like I have now, you can really see which parts need to go darker. And it's, like I said, it's the value changes from darks to lights that make everything look as real as it does. So you really need to get the darks as dark as they need to be. So once you've got to this stage where the eye is surrounded by value, you can see that the pupil was not dark enough and needed to go darker, and that's important. You need to be constantly looking at what you're drawing and evaluating it next to the values that you've already put down, and then if go back and change, darken something or lighten something. constantly looking at the reference image, and just keep going with it. Just keep working it, and it'll all come together. I'm just going around now and just putting the final touches to the eyelashes, just making them as dark as possible, as dark as they need to be. Definitely advise having a sharper pencil than I've got here. A mechanical pencil works good for this, but you can't really get them dark enough. And there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you learned something from that. I really can't stress enough that it's just about layers, just getting more and more and more layers on there until you get to the value that you need to reach. And yeah, there you go. So do's and don'ts with a realistic eye. Any questions or comments, please do post them below. And make sure you like and subscribe, and I will be back soon. Thank you, and goodbye.